Welcome back to Switch Corner. Today we're going to be taking a look at Green Hell on the Nintendo Switch. For the longest time we found ourselves stuck with the survival disaster experience that was Ark, but then in a matter of weeks we got not only the fantastic Long Dark, but now this. But can this one do enough to take the crown from the Long Dark, or is this simply a repeat of Ark? Well, hit subscribe if you love the Switch as much as we all do here, join our growing family, and let's get started. So Green Hell does indeed include a story mode. For most of you jumping into this, survival mode will be your immediate stop, but I wouldn't overlook this and I would for sure check it out. As I gotta say, it's a fun little experience that kicks off kind of as a tutorial, but quickly escalates into that core experience, but with a goal in mind outside of simply surviving. Here the plot goes like this: you and your wife Mia, you return to the jungle. You'd been here in years past. The idea is basically you, Jake, you wrote a book on this tribe from a previous visit, and now you want to get more information. Mia, though, she's basically doing all of this communication with the tribe alone. You're staying behind back at camp. That is at least until one day a panic call comes in from Mia, and there the challenge begins. Attempt to work out what is happening, and yeah, find your wife. This story, though, is surprisingly deep. There's a ton of twists and developments along the way. I was really impressed, and for me, personally, it's actually one of the better story spins we've seen on the survival genre, just thanks to some great writing and then characterization. So gameplay, it's what you are all here for, and let's talk modes first off. There's 3 of them. You got story mode, challenge mode. These are like 7 set modes where within a time limit you must like complete a set task. So let's say build a raft or create body armor. Finally then though, we get survival mode, the definitive way to play, where the only goal is to, or you know, survive as long as you can. All of these modes then, they come with a few different difficulty options. From the easiest, which is Tourist, it makes things as simple as they can be. It's focused purely on exploration, to the hardest of hardest, that is of course permadeath territory, and you're going to be going all the way back to the beginning after death. Permadeath here, I will say, even in survival mode, is only a factor on the highest difficulty levels, so you won't always lose your progress if that is a concern. Want to customize that difficulty though? There's an option here for just that. It opens up a long list of factors which you can then freely adjust. So controls, and I'm keeping this high level because I could be here all day breaking down the mechanics. If I do miss anything though, ask them in the comments below or jump onto our Discord to ask them there. Let me start with this though, the gameplay and how in-depth it is. By far the most in-depth of any survival entry on the Switch. Not necessarily because of what you can craft, I think the variety is around the same, but just how they implement it here. This isn't just, you know, I want to craft, let's say, a shelter, so, you know, collect up the items, then select shelter from the menu and you're done. Here, first you need to drop a blueprint. This blueprint you first of all had to find in your notebook by like scrolling through a few pages. Then you needed to find logs, so you head into the forest, you find them or you chop down some trees. Logs are big though, can't throw them in the old backpack, so you carry them on your shoulder back to base. Instead of just dropping them and they kind of appear, you have to select each and every one then and put them in their designated place. Same thing with the twigs, same thing with the palm leaves. This isn't like collect all the resources and boom, select shelter and it appears from nowhere. Here you need to put in the real like work. You need to walk around the structure itself like you're very much interacting with each of like the key ingredients. Same thing then goes for weapons as well. You'll open your backpack and from here you'll combine materials. Let's say a simple wooden spear, one of the first things you'll make in the game. Well, first we need to create the tip of the spear, so you take 2 rocks, place them on the crafting mat and hit that right trigger. With that done, now we need the stick itself. Now this can't be any old stick, it can't be a small stick or a log of course, but it needs to be a long stick. So you find one of them, you hit craft from a handy menu that pops up on screen when you interact with an item, and away you go. Here you'll combine the long stick, you'll add the spear tip, and then you'll also throw in some rope, and congrats, you are now the proud owner of one somewhat underpowered spear. Here's the challenge though, during that crafting, you probably got bit by a snake, maybe you got attacked by the local tribe, maybe a poisonous frog, or some ants decided you were lunch. Maybe, you know, you simply found yourself undernourished, running out of energy, while throwing up all over the place. Green Hell demands that not only you learn these combinations, but you keep a close eye on everything else all at the same time. Did I mention as well then these weapons won't even last that long, or at least until you find things like metal, they deteriorate really quickly. To top all that gameplay off, then expect to be keeping that inventory nice and tidy. You want to ensure you don't go over that carry weight. You want to find good clean water to drink, a surprisingly challenging feat, all while then keeping yourself fed. Now you're probably saying to yourself, there's water all over the place or things to eat. I'll agree there is, but if you look at like the rivers, for example, if you want parasites, then go ahead and drink here, but I wouldn't suggest that unless you're facing a particularly desperate moment. On parasites, actually, even health, you need to physically select one of 4 quadrants to identify wounds or rashes, so you can select each arm or each leg, rotate them around to see what's going on, like maybe there's a massive cut that needs a bandage, maybe there's leeches sucking the life out of you and you need to flick them off, or even, ants going to town on you like you're a walking buffet. I can't deny the gameplay solid. The depth is incredible. It's also extremely challenging, as like from the very beginning you'll need to explore, craft, chop down trees, watch out for enemies, watch out for like any sort of wildlife, work out locations, and then work out that next point of interest too. Something just simple though, like making an axe or chopping down a tree for the first time, even just starting a fire, it all has a sense of achievement that few games can match, because you really worked for it. You really had to like do everything involved with the process. Basically, the game, it just doesn't hold your hand. You need to work with common sense, but also try things, experiment, put items together and see what it makes. This is clearly the game's attempt though at making it feel true to what a real life scenario like this would be like, and it absolutely works in that sense. You wouldn't have a voiceover telling you the ropes unless you were already going quite mad, and that is the beauty of this game. It throws you in, gives you absolutely nothing, but everything you need is like in front of you in this jungle from the very beginning. It's just seriously tense stuff that demands the very best of anyone who enters its jungles. Problems on a gameplay front, 3 big ones. First is more you'll need to get used to it, but the controls, whole lot of menu operation, a whole lot of button combinations, and while the game explains them, there's for sure a learning curve. The only actual problematic one though, selecting items for crafting, all that sort of stuff in the backpack, it turns the right stick into a cursor, and it's about as jittery as they come. It could have really done with some sort of auto lock, especially for those more urgent matters like crafting bandages for wounds or removing leeches on that body check screen. Then the frame rate, and it's a bit all over the place, because I'll warn you now, this is an intensive game. You're literally walking through jungle constantly. The Switch is no doubt doing its best, and while it does frequently hit the 30 frames per second it's obviously going for, it will also frequently float around that 26 mark, even going as low as I saw like 19 and 20 from my time with the game. The final problem, it's more request if anything, multiplayer is missing from the Switch build. I would love to see that come across. So overall, for gameplay problems and all, like Long Dark, it's still an achievement in itself to no doubt get this running on the Switch. Outside of a few finicky control issues and that frame rate, and yes, I'd love to see that more stable, there's no doubt they've still pulled off something that is incredibly impressive and no doubt a challenging feat. Also, they have already announced a plan moving forward and released a roadmap for this Switch build that will see the Spirits of Amazonia added over 2021. This was a DLC that's already out on PC, so respect, as they clearly have their eyes set on future development for this game, and that's really all you can ask for from the devs. So graphics and full transparency, I actually played this last year on the PC, so it was a bit of a shock jumping into the Switch build. It's just not a good looking game. It's clear from the frame rate they've done what they can while keeping that performance in place, keeping it playable. While it does still have moments of beauty, they're kind of few and far between. You're going to look at your screen, you're going to find a whole lot of rough edges. The jungle then as well, at times it feels like there's almost a lack of foliage. Still feels jungle, but just not quite as jungle as what I saw on the PC. I got used to it eventually, but it took some time, and I think I actually set myself up for that just because I already had that comparison in my mind. It's something you can't avoid. The problem for me though, from a graphical standpoint, it felt like it made the game actually a bit more difficult because items tended to blend in more under the pressure the Switch was facing. Think like a poisonous frog on the ground. The drop from that sharp image makes these even harder to notice, or coconuts in trees, something that are essential. They're a whole lot more complicated. They were a simple idea in fact on the PC, but not here, as you often squint at your screen and need to position yourself a whole lot closer to the tree to figure it out. To top things off then, texture detail is low, and this goes for a lot of the things around you. The most noticeable of them all though, the tribes who attack, they are literally just walking blurs with some detail, but it's very difficult to make out any sort of facial features or anything else. Audio then is fantastic. If there's one area Green Howl absolutely nails, this is it. Don't expect music here outside of some like minor moments in story, but do expect the ambience of the forest, and it absolutely just brings this world to life. From tribe attacks to the local forest to the occasional like weather effects, think like rain. Really impressed with the sound design. This though is then topped off in story with some seriously strong voice acting that just absolutely elevates the whole like plot, the script, and yeah, call me impressed. This is one of them times I'd say absolutely play it first with headphones. So overall, this is a tough one. Green Howl is a very good game, and on Switch you still get that same sense of how special it is. The gameplay, once you get into it, once you get the controls down, by far the most in-depth of any survival experience on the Switch right now. It takes the crafting to a whole nother level. Same thing with just the ability to interact with the world around you, from like combat with the tribes to chopping down any plant or tree in sight. It captures that idea of this world as your playground, and there's very few like walls or anything that's going to break your immersion. You know, think like invisible walls all over the place. You just won't find that here. The problem though, frame rate and graphics. Not a good looking game at all, and it's clearly pushing the Switch to its limits, but I did find this then bled into the gameplay and made it at points simply more challenging, and if anything kind of like a tiny bit more annoying. There's a bit at the beginning I had to collect a flower with like red berries, and what took maybe a few minutes on PC took a lot longer here because it was just so much harder to identify them through kind of the downgrade in the output. This was a quick like realization for me that the sharp visuals from PC in a world of green helps more than you realize. If you haven't played it before though, then obviously you're not going to notice that. Now if I had to choose between PC or this build, I'd go PC if you have that option, but the Switch build, it's doing pretty good honestly. The only thing you're really going to notice if you haven't played it before, that frame rate. Today I'm giving Green Howl a good 7 out of 10. If you can handle the visuals and you love your survival, then jump in here, you'll no doubt love it. Just understand a few of the controls, you know, taking them over to like Joy-Cons, they're going to take some time to learn, and that right stick movement, the cursor can be a little bit on the annoying side. It's never a good thing to put a cursor on a console, honestly. I still think personally though the Long Dark is the best survival on Switch, just because I think it works better on the Switch. Give me both games on PC and that would actually probably be the other way round. The more sparse world of Long Dark though, and the cartoon-like visuals, it just feels like they put less pressure on our favourite console. With that then, look, a shout out to the patrons of the channel who are just going above and beyond to support Switch Corner. Helps more than you know, so thank you all so much. If you do want to check that out for yourself, I have linked it in the video description down below. Then hit subscribe if you love the Switch as much as we all do here. Join our growing family, and I'll see you all on the next video. Thanks everyone.